Welcome. Today we're going to discuss global warming, and I'm Rajan Velez. Global warming is one of the hottest topics that are being discussed currently in our news. No pun intended, of course. It is hot. It's very hot. Global warming is the warming of our planet, and it's a result of the accumulation of many heat trapping gases that are currently in our atmosphere. These are caused from things such as fossil fuels or even just simple pollution from livestock, such as methane. A lot of it is mostly carbon dioxide, but there are a few other elements lingering up there. Now, what happens is these elements trap the heat from the sun and it prevents it from escaping into space. This heats our planet more than what it normally is used to, and this is called the greenhouse effect. Here we have a visual of the greenhouse effect. Now, most of this has been going on since the industrial era, excuse me. As we know, this is when a lot of the natural gas and the coal was being used to produce many of the different products that were being put out there. What we're currently seeing now is that oil is being used into the mix, and this is because it's easier and it's cleaner to use. Um, as we can see here, this is how the greenhouse effect works. Now, in a natural setting where the elements in our atmosphere are actually balanced, the solar radiation enters into the atmosphere and some of it stays, but a lot of it goes back out into space. Now, in this case, where it is human enhanced, or in our case, human caused global warming, what we can see here is that all of the pollutions from from our vehicles and many of the machinery that we use to produce, this all goes back into the atmosphere and it stays there. Now, being that this stays in our atmosphere, it's trapping all of the solar radiation and it's preventing a lot of it from escaping. This is what's causing it to heat up so much. This is a graph that further demonstrates how global warming is human caused. Now, as we can see, starting from about 800,000 years ago, it does go up and down. That can be admitted. However, it never did pass what's here is 300 parts per million in the atmosphere. So for millennia, as it states here in our graph, it generally stayed below this level. Now, as of 1950 alone, it has spiked a lot, and this can be due to a lot of the plastic that's being produced, and also many of the vehicles and the increase in the population that has been observed due to globalization. Global warming causes ocean acidification. Ocean acidification is when the pH balance of the ocean is thrown out of whack. Now, this happens because all of the trapped carbon dioxide in our atmosphere combines with the water. Now, being that, well, we will have to speak a little bit of chemistry here, but here we have carbon dioxide and we have H2O, which is water. Now, that extra molecule of carbon dioxide combines with the carbon dioxide and the water, and this makes an extra oxygen molecule, or it adds an extra oxygen atom, and this produces a more acidic ocean. Now, as we can see here in these images of before and after, it shows that this acidity in the ocean is bleaching coral. Bleaching coral, which is the basis of the ecosystem of the ocean, is extremely dangerous. And what happens is this coral is alive. It's pretty much similar to plants, but it's actually made from skeletons. And what happens is this living organic life form is no longer able to survive because of the acidity. A lot of the smaller fish that are here in this coral, they swim all throughout it. They live in it, as we have seen, for example, in Finding Nemo, when Nemo and his dad actually lived in a sea anemone that was also in a coral reef. What happens is it gets bleached and it can no longer house all of these creatures. Now, the bigger creatures that feed on them, they no longer have anything to eat. So the food chain gets broken. This is what breaks the entire ecosystem, and it also causes a lot of trouble around the world for many of our populations. Not only does it affect just the coral reefs, but it also affects actual shellfish. We have clams and many other oysters, for example. They actually float around in the water and they swim and they get moved around. And this acidification actually turns their shells white. Now, another issue that we're experiencing here is the shrinking ice sheets and the decrease of snow cover. Now, what we are seeing now is that there is a lot less snow falling in many parts of the world. And as we can see here in this image, this is what it looks like now. This was once a mountain peak that actually was covered in snow. Now, if we look at the other image, this is showing how our ice sheets are increasingly shrinking over time. Now, because of the increase of the average temperatures, what is happening is the ice sheets are not able to go back to what they normally are. They don't get to grow back to be as thick in the winter. And then, because of these longer summers and higher average temperatures, they're not able to go back to the density. Now, what's happening is these ice sheets are not only disappearing, but as you can see in this image, they're breaking apart. Now, polar bears, which need somewhere to step on, not only for mating, but for eating and for many other polar bear activities, they're not able to do that. So, as we can see here, we have a struggling polar bear. This is an increasing danger for our polar bears. They have been decreasing in population exponentially for a few years now, especially since the increase in global warming. If we do not do anything for this to reduce the rate that the Earth is warming at, what is going to happen is polar bears will disappear, and so will other members of their ecosystems, just like in the coral reef systems. Hurricanes and rising sea levels. Now, what is happening is we have all of that water from the ice, all of that water coming from the sky that is just falling everywhere. It's just moisture, 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 which creates more and more humidity. Hurricanes love humidity. Now, what we can see is that a lot of this moisture that is being displaced around our world is actually creating many, many situations where people are experiencing what is called rising sea levels. Now, yeah, as we know, anything that is, for example, melted, it has to go somewhere else, which for in this case is water. Now, there are many coastal communities that are currently being challenged because of global warming. As we can see, Louisiana experienced Katrina a few years ago, and the Gulf Coast, for example, has for many of these years, especially in this year specifically, have experienced many challenges. Honduras is another country that experienced two hurricanes, which depleted their resources and destroyed a lot of property. Now, because of this humidity and the rising temperatures fueling these storms, it makes them ever stronger. This year alone, 2020 broke records hurricane wise because not only were they stronger, um, it actually depleted all of the names that were planned and they had to go into using the Greek alphabet. And this is a result of global warming. It's because of the rising temperatures, which is creating more humidity. This is creating more strength for these storm systems. And as we have seen, they travel across the Caribbean, for example, and many other places, and they destroy communities. How can you impact this change? Now, one thing that we can do is use less energy. How can you use less energy? Are you turning off lights when you're not using them? Do you need the heat on right now? Do you need the AC on right now? Can it be remedied by opening the window? Um, are you recycling? A lot of times we buy food and other goods in jars and plastic, which is great because it can be reused. Now, just with a quick washing, we can reuse a lot of these items. Cans should always be recycled. If you're not going to use a bottle anymore, recycle it, of course. Other ways that you can obviously reduce your carbon footprint is you can carpool, such as Uber Pool. Even though we're in a pandemic right now, it's not really an option. But if you're able to use mass transportation, for example, such as the train or the bus, it's definitely a better idea. Not only are there vehicles specially equipped to reduce pollution, um, you and many other members of society using one form of transportation and sharing this energy to, travel, of course, um, it reduces our fuel usage that we are actually using now. And it's very important that we reduce this because that is the only way that we can get our temperature to go down and we can prevent global warming from continuing. And if we do not prevent this from continuing, it can destroy the world. Thank you.